Welcome to the Seafood News Weekly Roundup Show. I'm your host and seafoodnews.com editor Michael Ramsing, and today's program is presented to you by Urner Barry's Comtel. This is our very last show of the year, and holy cow, how quickly did that year go by. It's been a great year for all of us at Urner Barry. We worked hard to deliver the best market and news information service to you in the seafood industry. We moved into our new offices and we welcomed in new staff members. We hope all of you have had a prosperous 2016 as we all look forward to even more success in the new year. As for today's show, we have a good one. Our last top story of the year comments on a major non-decision by the North Pacific Fishery Management Council during the last day of their winter meetings. But first, let's check in on some of the headline news from around the industry from the past week. We'll start with more grim news from the West Coast Dungeness crab industry, where fishermen announced an indefinite strike to crab harvesting. The walk-off started after West Coast buyers offered to pay crabbers $2.75 per pound at the docks, a price point that was 25 cents cheaper from boat prices that were originally negotiated by some in the industry in early December. The Bodega Bay Fishermen's Marketing Association said they do not expect crabbers operating in the bay and north through Oregon and Washington and as far up north to the Canadian border to resume fishing until sometime after the new year. In some other fishery news, Gulf of Mexico's shrimp landings from the 5 major producing states continue to trend below the 5-year average for the fishery. The number of shrimp harvested in November fell to 9 million pounds, which actually isn't very surprising since Gulf production usually starts to decline around this time and until the fishery opens up again in the spring. But the Gulf harvest has now been in steady decline for 5 straight years. The total harvest in 2016 now stands at around 88 million pounds, which is just marginally higher from 2010, the year when shrimp fishing and inventories were severely depleted by the BP oil spill. Domestic wholesale prices for Gulf shrimp have trended higher all year because of these supply shortages. Urner Barry prices for wild Gulf caught white shrimp in December are up as much as 28%, depending on the type and size. These are some of the highest price points recorded all year in these markets. Meanwhile, in some other company news, Profish, a major seafood distributor in Washington, D.C., won a bid to double the size of its operations in Ivy City. Profish reports $60 million in annual sales to domestic markets from New York to Virginia Beach. In another company announcement, China's online seafood sales platform Gfresh posted the single largest sales day in the history this month. The company said it sold about $1.5 million worth of seafood directly to China's domestic market in one day. Gfresh credited the record number to a number of certification and distribution partnerships, along with other incentive programs the platform has launched since it was founded in 2010. Remember, subscribe to seafoodnews.com, get all of these stories and more every day. As for today's top story, seafoodnews.com reported and commented on the North Pacific Fishery Management Council's decision to table, without further action, all options for the Gulf of Alaska groundfish rationalization on the last day of the December meeting. In doing so, they violated a promise made to the Gulf of Alaska trawl fleet and, in the view of seafoodnews.com editor John Sackton, have emulated one of the fateful decisions that doomed fisheries management in New England. This is because the decision leaves the Gulf of Alaska trawl fleet with no protections from a derby fishery and with no legal mechanisms to control bycatch. The decision incentivizes Alaska's fishermen to get their fishing in early before bycatch cap limits are reached, and it provides no mechanism for controlling rogue players who have high bycatch. Lack of bycatch tools will lead to a race for fish and fishery shutdowns, reducing the volume of fish landings for processing. John Sackton goes on to write in this week's column that if the decision is not reversed, the days of large-scale processing in the Gulf are numbered, and that type of production will be confined to the Bering Sea. And that concludes our last report of the year. Today's show was presented by Urner Barry's Comtel. Gain access to the wholesale seafood industry's top platform for market news, quotations, and expert commentary. Traders in the wholesale seafood market make a better business decision every day when they use Urner Barry's Comtel. Remember, you can always tell us how we're doing on Twitter by tweeting at us at SeafoodComNews and at UBSeafood, and like Urner Barry and Seafood News on Facebook to learn about what we're up to. You can also listen to Urner Barry on your mobile device through our Market Digest and Seafood News podcast series. Our latest podcast goes deeper into the Gulf of Mexico's poor shrimp harvest this year, so go check that one out. Anyway, for Urner Barry and Seafood News, I'm Michael Ramsing. Thanks for watching. We wish all of you a happy and healthy new year, and we'll talk to you all in 2017.